was a reluctant noble plotting an escape from a marriage he wanted even less than she did. She hadn't expected this. This wasn't the plan. It wasn't how any of this was meant to happen. She couldn't face the Viceroy of Onar. She couldn't face her council. She couldn't breathe. Reason broke through her haze of panic as her mother's voice sounded in her head. A Maharani never runs away from a problem. She faces it head-on. She could picture her mother's severe face as if she were standing right there, hissing the same lessons in Vira's ear 1,000 times, not expecting Vira to retain any of them. Face it head-on. Find out who killed Harish, quickly. Guards had already been dispatched through the forest and the surrounding neighborhoods of the Var, searching for witnesses, for any clues that might lead them to a suspect. But it had been more than an hour since the scouts had reported the body. If the guards hadn't yet found the killer, Vira had a sinking feeling that they never would. Find a way to appease the Viceroy. It would be only a matter of days before he learned of his son's fate, a precious few days in which Vira had to strike a new deal with him, or find some other way to protect the country from Riya, their northwestern neighbor. Riya hadn't made a move in months, but the threat of the war she'd inherited had been a constant shadow lingering over Vira's rule from the moment she'd become the Maharani 8 months earlier. How do I do this, Amma? But her mother had never offered comfort, even when she was alive. Vira's hand drifted down to the iron hilt of the talvar strapped to her waist, as if it would give her strength. It had been pried from her dead mother's stiff hands and thrust into hers. It was polished and sharp, the curved silver blade gleaming, as if it had never been covered in the blood of her ancestors. It hummed against her hand with latent magic, a demanding buzz that Vira was still unaccustomed to. In truth, everything about the talvar was unfamiliar. The weight, the balance, even the elaborate designs carved into the hilt. "This is a Maharani's weapon," was the only response she'd received when she fought to keep the one she trained with for years. That weapon was simple, elegant, comfortable. But because it hadn't been forged with magic, it now hung on the wall opposite her bed, mounted there as a reminder of the life she'd left behind. At the sound of rustling, Vira turned to the shadows, her talvar drawn. Its magic grated against her palm, harsh and unforgiving, as her hand trembled. The blade glowed white, crackling with sparks of lightning as she braced herself for the return of Harish's killer. But it was Amrit who stepped out of the trees. Vira's grip relaxed, the magic waned, and blood rushed back into her fingers. She shoved the talvar into its sheath, trying to ignore the weight of her mother's ever-present judgment. A Maharani's talvar is an extension of her rule. She couldn't even hold a talvar. How could she expect to hold on to her country? "You should have waited for me." Leaves crunched under Amrit's feet as he crossed the length of the clearing, walking toward her. A dull shard of moonlight illuminated his angular face. He hadn't changed out of his formal guard attire, and a thick silver bangle wrapped around the silk sleeve of his upper left arm. She couldn't see it from where she stood, but she knew there was a medallion in the center that was stamped with a swan, a sign of his rank and service to the royal family. "Contrary to what the council believes, I can protect myself against a few wild deer," she said. Vira kept her voice light, but her mouth burned with the bitter aftertaste of the lie. She hadn't been able to wield a blade with a steady hand since the battle at Ritzur 8 months before. Not since she'd failed to command Ashoka's armies to victory. Not since she'd lost Ashokan land for the first time in 400 years. Not since she'd erred so badly the viceroys of 2 provinces had walked out of her council, taking with them countless troops and resources she desperately needed. Amrit looked at her, and for the span of a heartbeat she was certain he could see right through her. She hadn't told him, told anyone, about the nightmares, about the way her hand